morning. Welcome to This Happy Guru. My name's Kirsty Bentley Taylor, and I'm the hosting of this show. Today I wanted to talk to you about yoga. I'm a yoga teacher and a life coach, or a spiritual happiness coach, as I like to call it. I focus more in on the spiritual rather than the genre of the whole genre of life. I tend to find that the spiritual permeates through everything anyway, so you kind of might as well just cut to the chase, make sure that's okay as a good foundation. But one of the ways that I help my clients to progress through with coaching is through yoga. And it's a practice that I have for myself every day, not simply the asana practice, but the whole ethos and philosophy of yoga. And I kind of realized over the last few weeks, we've been delving into a lot of fabulous melting pots, but I haven't really delved into the one thing that I practice every day, the one thing that has helped shape and change my life, and the one thing that keeps me present and conscious on my path every day. And so today I thought I'd share a little bit of that with you. One of the reasons that I was kind of inspired to talk about this today, and this isn't a live show, this is a pre-recorded show, so please feel free to comment, and I will endeavour to get back to you, but unfortunately you won't be able to ask questions throughout. But one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you about this today was because I get my daily inspiration from certain things. I was lucky enough to meet the hugging saint Amma not so long ago, and the whole experience of that really inspired me to kind of be very present in the moment. I had some wonderful experiences throughout the whole of the day. So she came to a local race course actually near me, and it was there in the kind of the function room and everything that this kind of the meeting and greeting of Amma, the hugging saint, became available to common Joe like me, and I think one of the main things that came across to me initially was how so many people from so far away had traveled to come and see her. Now, I was very lucky. I've known about Amma for a long time, probably about the last sort of 8-9 years. She's kind of regularly come into my spectrum of living. And it's always seemed like a really wonderful thing to do, just to kind of go around the world giving people hugs. You know, when you allow somebody into your personal space, you not only share your energy with them, but you share their energy. Now, that can be quite tiring. In fact, I should imagine for her it's very tiring. I should imagine she's used to it by now. But initially, it would have been quite hard for her, I think, to have taken on the space and the energy of other people, especially when you consider the sort of people or the people who are going to be experiencing certain types of things in their life, to be looking towards a saint for hugging, for love, for guidance. I know she sees a lot of people who are very ill, sometimes who are terminally ill. Sometimes it's people who are children who are going through a lot of stuff emotionally, not just physically. There's a lot, she touches very many lives. And like I say, right down from the kind of, the lowliest Joe like myself, up to kind of people of high authority, and who are still looking and who are still kind of searching for that acceptance, that love, that guidance from somebody who basically personifies love. Enables herself to go out every day and just give every day. And I'm kind of sure from my experience that she receives back. But at the same time, there's a lot of organization. There's a lot of sharing of self, sharing of soul, that came into this. And this was kind of one of the big things that came to me throughout the whole day. I met some amazing people who gave me a lot of pointers, messages, if you like, that came into me. Funny things like, books that I should read, talking to another yoga teacher there who was experiencing burnout. And I was able to share some of the stuff that I do regularly to be able to stop that burnout, to be able to kind of come back from that overwhelm. And so that was something that I could give. I then had a lovely experience with a lady who just looked the spitting image of one of my friends. It was crazy. She sat down next to me and I had to double take. And then we were able to find out from her that she coaches, but she looks after and coaches terminally ill people. And we got into a lovely conversation about that and how rewarding that is for her. You see, because from my point of view, I could only see that that would be so draining, something that would just be take on you. And she's just like, absolutely not, and there's so much giving from them as well because they're so grateful. So they're really willing to try harder, to be more present in the moment for you, to engage in any activity that you're setting out for them, those sorts of things. So I had a real kind of eye-opening day, and culminating with this hug from Amma, which I ended up waiting 7.5 hours for, with ticket in hand. But one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you about yoga today was because while I was waiting for Amma, I was also shopping with Amma, and one of the books that I bought was Amma's Pearls of Wisdom, which I'm sure is available to buy. Google it. It's a wonderful book. Every day of the year, it sets out a premise for, I suppose, meditation, in a sense, an idea of being able to understand where coming from love is every day and how you can then go forth and kind of manifest that and share that with the world. And what she does is every day of the year, she writes down her thoughts, her pearls of wisdom for that day. And whether they're structured in a certain way or whether they've just been written out, her pearls of wisdom are written out for each day, I don't know. I'm assuming that she's taking, as most people do, I think, from source directly down, especially somebody from, of her kind of religious background, of her belief background, that sort of thing. But today's was we receive what we give. And it brought me fully into my yoga practice this morning. So I get up about 5 every morning, and this morning I practiced outside because the weather is amazing in the UK at the moment, like unprecedented summer. Like I'm loving it every day. We're like, because I think as an English person, you're ever present that it's just going to change at any minute, So that's a nice practice for staying in the now as well. But her pearls of wisdom for today, for July the 25th, where we give what we receive. And I'm just going to read it out to you and then share with you where that took me this morning. When a change takes place in us, it is reflected in others as well. My children, always remember that we receive only what we give. The heart pumps blood into all the cells of the body. The cells get nutrition in this way. The blood then flows back into the heart. If there's any obstacle to this, life itself becomes threatened. Like the heart, we need to learn not only to receive, but also to give back. Only when we give do we receive in return. In the chain of life, a deficiency in one link will affect the others. We need to understand that our every smile, word, and deed has the power to spread sunshine to the lives of many others. So we need to make sure that our actions create joy and contentment, not only for us, but also for others. So I love that. I love that idea of transference of energy, that, as I've discussed before, that if you fill yourself up, then you can go up and fill out others, and transfer that energy and give that energy, give that part of yourself out. And it really brought me home to my yoga practice, because I realized that as disciplined as I am in getting up every day and getting into it, there are some days when I'm very, very mindful that I am just kind of dragging myself onto the mat. And other days when I feel really, really up and open for it and ready to receive, ready to give, all those sorts of things. But that ultimately it does start with me. It starts with my own practice. It starts with me setting my own intentions for the day. It starts with me accepting what I am, accepting where I am that day. And it starts with the breath, always the breath. So the breath in yoga practice is a huge part of not only asana practice, but meditation, not only of meditation, but of bringing yourself back into a place of contemplation, a place of in the now, very, very much being in the present state. And it strikes me that it's not particularly well encouraged part of ourselves throughout like normal growing up. Like unless you have somebody who is very present and consciously aware of the breath and the power of the breath in your life, you probably don't think that much about it until you either lose it, you struggle for it, or something like, you choke and you take that gasping breath when you suddenly begin to feel, oh my goodness, I can breathe again, that sort of thing. Certainly that was how I was very aware of it before I started yoga practice, was it's kind of just this thing that just you do and it keeps you alive and you can't be without it and all those sorts of things. But I never really had any idea of how deeply you can connect in with all other parts of yourself through the breath. Um, and so that was, something that was kind of really eye-open to me in the like first thing in the morning, because I noticed how different my breath becomes through different parts of the day. And certainly when I wake up, I think having been in deep sleep and having had quite shallow breath, throughout that sleep, just really taking on what I needed, allowing the lungs, allowing the parasympathetic nervous system that's affected by the breath, allowing all of those parts of the body to really just relax over the course of the night. Um, when you begin to deep breathe first thing in the morning, it really is like waking up your entire body, not simply because you begin to really utilize the lungs and therefore you bring a lot of air, you bring a lot more space into the thoracic chest, into the thoracic body, into the core here, but also because you begin to release some of the tensions that you've kind of built up perhaps from lying still all through the night. You begin to become very, very aware. Deep breathing will bring you very much into the present, bring you very aware and into your day. And you begin to kind of wake the body from the inside out, if you like. Whereas I feel like before I started my breathing practice, my pranayama, first thing in the morning before asana practice, I would probably stay with that shallow breath for a lot longer as I just fell into the routine of the day. Now, I still build routine into my day, and we've talked about routine and ritual, what the difference is between the two, how powerful ritual can be and how draining routine can be. And so although I kind of fall into my routines of the day, I see them as very much being rituals. If I don't get up and do my yoga practice, which is starting with my breath work, starting with my pranayama, opening up my heart, opening up my body, I find that my asana practice is kind of affected by that. It all becomes about the breath initially. All my asanas, every pose that I put my body into becomes about opening up the chest. That's the initial thing that I notice through every practice. It becomes about falling into the rhythm of my breath. It becomes falling into the idea of what that rhythm is of the day. So my mind becomes occupied by that. How is my breath today? How is my body responding? How is this affecting my asana practice and my stretch and my development into an asana or into a pose? And each of these poses are designed to be able to move the energy around your body, to be able to manifest health, flexibility, um, you know, awareness of self as well, awareness of body, so that you can be very present in yourself, in your physical self, as well as your mental, emotional, and spiritual self throughout the day. So one of the things that kind of is really enlightening to me first thing in the morning is how I'm breathing and how easily it comes to me to be able to expand that breath throughout my body. One of the practices that I do is to take the breath, start it off small and begin to develop it bigger and bigger. So I begin to become very consciously aware of the expansion of my lungs and the way that they grow with each developing breath. So initially, kind of starting, like I said, with a sort of shallow breath, and you're kind of gently breathing. And then it just gets a little bit deeper as you begin to inhale. Each time the lungs begin to expand more, they begin to get a little bit more deeper. And you can feel that the space is beginning to kind of open up a little bit, that from the inside out, you're beginning to kind of change, open, awaken, if you like, to that day. And then what happens is, as you begin to sort of really expand the lung capacity, the lungs begin to really push out on the rib capacity, like the capacity of your rib cage, which with every breath will open and close, open and close. And of course, because of the situation of those ribs, because of where they're placed within your body, they affect your um, your front of your chest, your sternum opening up through the front of the chest, through the pectoral muscles, into the front of the shoulders, up towards the throat, down into the abdomen, down into opening up the pelvis. And then in the reverse, you've got the shoulders and you've got the thoracic rib cage around the back. You've got your lower back, you've got your kind of the area around your lower back, your waistline, where again, as you begin to really deep breathe, you can feel all those muscles opening up from the inside out. And it's a lovely way of welcoming yourself into the day. I always liken it to a flower, and the lotus flower has been very much popularized through yoga, through any sort of spiritual practice. Really, it's just been this beautiful kind of opening out of the day as way it does every morning. And it's the same as a lot of flowers. I'm been kind of watching some of the flowers in our garden at the moment because it has been so dry here. Most of the flowers now have gone, but we've got this one plant. I don't know what it's called. It's absolutely stunning, but it opens up during the morning and opens out full during the day. And then as the day begins to close, it begins to close up as well. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's like this beautiful kind of purple color, and it opens up, and the bees love it. You know, like it feels like it gives so much, this flower, because it flowers around 3 or 4 times a year. And it kind of, like I say, over the course of the day, it opens up, and then towards the course of the day, at the end of the day, it closes down. And it reminds me of how we are and the natural cycles of our body, and just how important that is to nature and to everything. You know, that natural cycle of the day, of opening up in the morning and closing down at night time, is something that we, you know, the majority of nature goes through, or whether it reverses it to be opening up at night time and closing down during the daytime. Everything's cyclic. And so being able to tap into your own cycle first thing in the morning is a real gift. So practicing my yoga first thing in the morning really sets me up to accept myself as part of nature, to accept myself as a flower, if you like, opening up, you know, something that opens up initially during the morning and opens gently and opens mindfully and allows each one of its petals to open fully so that it's present in that moment. And it shines all day long. You know, the flowers are open. They are, you know, asking to be tended to by the bees. They're asking for the sunshine. They're absorbing the light. They're absorbing all the goodness that they draw from the external world, from the, you know, whether or not that's kind of a grey day or a sunny day, they still open no matter what. They're still open to the opportunities of the day, still open to the energies and the giving from the day. And then at night time, when the day begins to wane and it's not really their time anymore, gradually you'll see petal after petal begin to furl over, and they literally kind of twist like that to close, which is another thing that I find beautiful. And yet the bees will still kind of wheedle their way in a little bit, and try and kind of still get the last of the pollen out of them, you know. So I'm still trying to, you know, you haven't closed completely, I can still get in there. And so while the flowers are closing down, you'll still see the bees wiggling themselves in there, getting the pollen, getting whatever it is that they want out there, and then backing themselves back out again before flying off again. And it's a beautiful thing. And it reminds me, as Emma reminds me this morning, that actually it's all about giving and receiving. You know, so as you give open during the day, as you open up during the day like these flowers, you are receiving as much as you're giving. Yeah, you're giving out to the bees, you're giving out to the insects, you're giving out to the world, you're giving out whatever it is that you need to do to enable your function, your part that is so vital in the world to be manifest. And then towards the end of the day, when the energy is depleting and it's beginning to close, you gently close yourself up, nurturing close, not a snap close, a gentle nurturing close, and leaving yourself protected and able to rest for the day so that you can do all that again. And one of the things about giving and receiving is, of course, like Amma tells us, is that it is almost the purpose of life. It is the purpose to be able to sort of shine your light and go out there, influence people and help people. I think one of the things that leads so many people into unrest and into upset is the fact that they don't ever feel like they really touch on that focus, on that purpose that they have for their lives. You know, that's one, I think it's probably the number one cause of unrest throughout my work that I've experienced in other people, is the fact that they don't feel like they're really expressing themselves. They don't feel like they're really being heard. They feel like the message inside them isn't being expressed in some way or another. And that can be from lots of different things. It can be from their inability to be able to communicate it at that time. It can be because they don't quite know what it is yet and they're still looking. You know, there's so many things that help, you know, or that really shut people down from talking and expressing and sharing their gifts with the world. But this is, again, one of the reasons why I practice yoga, because it enables me to really practice every day giving to myself, accepting myself, which is a huge part of removing these blockages, And being able to consider, I think, consider where I am that day, consider what it is that I'm experiencing, being able to find the power and find the strength within myself to be able to create the life that I want to live every day. This morning, for example, I woke up 5. I came into my room, which I'm in now. I usually practice my yoga in here. This has got great energy, this room. And I tend to practice my yoga, my meditation and stuff in this room. It's very quiet. I love the blue. I'm surrounded by blue and I love that deep blue. It reminds me of like the sapphire oceans of Africa, of Egypt, where my sister spent a lot of time. We went from, she's married to an Egyptian man. So a lot of my family are over there. And so it begins to, it kind of, it makes me feel like that. I remember going into the ocean in Egypt and it being really blown away by the color of the sea, the color of the underwater world there. Having lived in Thailand, everything's this kind of a beautiful jade green that, that you kind of would symbolize with the Orient. And then when I went to Egypt and I went snorkeling there and like just, that first initial look under the water, and it was literally so sapphire blue, crystal clear. And the reef shelves just dropped straight down. So it's kind of like you could see like the 30 meters below, absolutely so clearly, like I was just looking into a painting. Really, really beautiful. And so I often practice a lot of, like my yoga. I work in here. This is where my good energy is held. But this morning I came in here and I felt a calling to go outside. I felt like this is kind of my routine, if you like, my ritual of coming in here and creating this energetic space where for my work as well. But then this morning I just felt like, no, I need to be outside today. I need to be out in nature. I need to feel it. And as I opened my back door, there were 2 fox cubs playing in my back garden. And they were kind of just playing around, just having fun, no kind of ulterior motive other than just fun. As soon as I turned the key in the door, they kind of both looked up and neither one of them wanted to move. As I stayed there looking at them, you could see that they were kind of just sussing out whether or not I was going to be a real threat or whether I was going to be, someone who could almost come and play perhaps. And then my dog came to the door and that sort of made the decision for them. I've got a Rhodesian Ridgeback. He kind of, he's tall. And so, yeah, that made the decision for them. They suddenly were very aware that actually danger was present as well. And as much as it might have been fun to play with this young woman or this small girl or whatever, however I perceive myself or that how they perceive me, it was kind of just, that was the deciding factor and they were off. But as soon as I kind of opened the door, my dog went out, had a little sniff around, realised that all the fun times had gone, and we went outside. And he always comes outside and practices yoga with me. He does a few downward dogs, a few upward dogs, and then he'll lay down with me. And he often touches, leans out towards me in practice, which is another thing that I love. What I've loved about taking my practice outside, especially in England, because I used to do it a lot in Thailand, but what I've discovered in taking it outside as well is the same response I get from the animals in Thailand I get in England. And it's slightly, there's fewer of the animals in England. That would, I would say I get visits. I used to get a lot of visits onto my mat from insects, butterflies particularly, and kind of the little, what they called, the little kind of millipede things that often crawl along. There's these little red millipedes in Thailand. They're about that big, and they'll crawl along and they'll explore all around my mat. And of course the ants, I have ants all the time coming onto my mat in Thailand, and they're the regular visitors that I get in England as well. So that's been pretty precious too, because the thing is, it's not just about what insects that come up to you, it's how they react around you. So practicing yoga, I am also very mindful of ahimsa. I've touched on this before, this idea of non-violence, of non-harming, not just to other things and other people, but also to yourself. And it's something that I practice on my mat, as always when I'm outside. I don't want to hurt anything. I don't want my yoga practice to destroy any kind of life. That's not what it's about for me. So I'm very mindful of anything that comes onto my mat, giving it space, giving it time to be able to move off, sometimes giving it a little bit of encouragement if it needs it, very gently kind of guiding. I'll often just put my hands up and guide these animals off my mat. But I've had all sorts of things coming to me, and I often look for the messages in them as well, especially if they recur. Caterpillars were one that came to me when I was practicing in India. And from out of nowhere, I mean, they just seem to come from anywhere. Like, didn't matter whether I was practicing in the middle of the jungle or down by the Ganges or in the middle of my room, like tiny little concrete room in the middle of my ashram. Um, it didn't seem to matter. Caterpillars were coming at me from all over the place. And I chose to see that as a symbol. And when I looked into it, obviously it's that whole metamorphic state. It's about kind of the going within. It's about change. Caterpillars, I don't know whether you know this, caterpillars have these rogue cells within them. They have them present throughout their entire lives. They're born with these rogue cells, which are always trying to be heard. And these rogue cells are the catalyst cells, if you like, to the conversion from caterpillar to butterfly. So caterpillars go around their life consuming. They are eating, they are exploring, they are constantly take. And it's only when they then change into being a butterfly that they actually turn that cycle around again, or bring that cycle in and begin to then give out to to the world. But what's interesting about caterpillars for me is that they kind of consume and rest, consume and rest. And then these rogue cells, because of the consumption, because of the way that they've consumed and taken themselves into this state of almost obesity, this greed, this they've manifested this huge self. Because of that, these rogue cells are able to then finally permeate through and get on top of the other cells in the caterpillar and overtake the body. So they enable themselves through this consumption, through this kind of greed, through this constant grazing pattern of take. They've enabled themselves to be overtaken by the rogue cells, by these cells that have laid dormant, just waiting for the right time. They don't want to be attacked by the interior cells, like I suppose the immune system of the caterpillar. They don't want to be attacked by that until it's the right time, until they can overpower it. And then when they do, that's when the catalyst for change begins. And these rogue, by consuming some of the parts of the caterpillar, these rogue cells induce the idea of a chrysalis into the caterpillar. So the caterpillar will then go inside. It cocoons itself up. It makes itself into kind of a peaceful place where it can then go and hibernate or stay while the change takes place, while the rogue cells overpower the entire caterpillar body and begin to produce what it is that they've always known they needed to be, which is the butterfly. And this story to me was amazing. Like, butterflies have always something that's come to me in life, one method or another. People have bought me butterfly jewelry, butterfly paintings, all sorts of things, like strange things. As I look back over my life, they've always come to me. And I certainly see them as kind of a guiding spiritual animal for me. And they have been in the past, and they continue to surround me wherever I go. It doesn't really matter where they are. I can't tell you the number of butterflies that have landed on me in beaches, random beaches, and how many I see when I'm taking my dog for a walk, and again, they will land on me. They'll flutter around me. I've had them land on my nose, my feet, my arms, my shoulders, lying down on a beach, just in my bikini or whatever, and they'll land on my chest. Crazy things with butterflies, and I love it. But it's again something that kind of brings me back to that conversion and that sort of being present within yourself, so that you can see and feel the change. And that's what my yoga practice really enables me to do on a daily basis. So as much as sometimes it can feel like a routine, I also know that it's a ritual I need to get into to be able to set my mind, to be able to set my body, to be able to set my intentions for the day. After my yoga practice, I feel so less likely to lean into the things that are banned for me in terms of consumption. And that can be from food to drink to, engaging in drama, to healthier lifestyle ways in terms of managing stress, managing my children, the needs and desires of the people around me that affect me. All those sorts of things are empowered by my yoga practice. And there's the philosophy side of yoga, which I love as well. This idea that really this journey within is the crux, the reason for us all being here. And that to explore that really is, the whole point of kind of being here as well. There's a lot of, philosophy over the course of time immemorial has looked at why are we here? What is the purpose of us being here? Sometimes it seems very easy to be able to look out to the natural world and see the reason that insects are around, for example, see the reason that there is this kind of inherent circle of life within the animal kingdom. And we seem to have distanced ourselves from that. I was reading, in fact, I'm part of this quantum creating group at the moment, which is led by somebody that I interviewed a few weeks ago, Paul Webb. He's a coach and a mentor, and a fascinating guy. You know, he's very buoyant, very vibrant person, and I really gravitate towards that. You know, I find that very it's very nice energy to be around. It's very exciting energy to be around because it infuses you. But he's started this course called Quantum Creating, and I've joined because I felt like after the past few weeks of talking about the different energies, the masculine and feminine energies, I noticed that throughout my life, I tend to lean much more into my feminine than my masculine, and I need to kind of be bringing the masculine up a little bit to remain in balance. So I decided that quantum creating was very much placed in the scientific, that I liked Paul enough to kind of feel like he could be a good mentor for me, because he is sort of a no BS type guy. He's very practical. He's very pragmatic. There's the accountability, but there's not the kind of the boot camp accountability where, you know, you're being shouted at, you're being kind of, you know, ushered into a belief system that perhaps you're not quite ready for just yet. You know, it's good. I you know, I like it. But one of the things that he delved into in our first session together was quantum mechanics, quantum physics. Well, this isn't something that I've been particularly aware of in my life. You know, I've heard of metaphysical, and I've heard about and explored metaphysical genres, the idea of metaphysics, what that means to us, what that actually is, but not quantum physics particularly, or quantum mechanics as it was originally called when it was discovered. And one of the things that interested me most about it, or it interested me most about it yesterday and really opened up like a whole thought process for me, was the idea that at some point in science, about 200 and, well, probably about 300 years ago now, there was this defining moment whereby matter and energy were separated. And that was the scientific thought of the day, that energy was one thing and matter was another. Well, of course, now we know that anything made of matter is made of energy as well. You know, we know that the two aren't separate; they're actually interlinked, and that's, you know, that's kind of again coming full circle. But it reminded me, or it allowed me to recognize why we've got this kind of this duality, or why we've had this duality between science and religion, because there's often times when they kind of intercross. And it's this, you know, many scientists talk about this. They talk about the ability to kind of be able to experience something on a different level rather than just thought. So Newton talks about how by impinging his mind on something, he was able to really get the idea of what it is and what it does and why it works that way, which is essentially meditation. Yeah. So, but by implanting his mind there, he's also drawing down from source, because by focusing in on one thing, it's kind of you're meditating on one thing, your conscious awareness is in on one thing, at which point then you begin to bring in the kind of idea that source is directing and source is dropping down into, because of the sense of direction that you get from just imposing your mind onto something, you know, just that direct focus, that idea that you are really just consumed with one thing and how it is that that thing works. And he talks about that a lot with the discoveries the scientific discoveries that he's made throughout his career. So that was interesting to me as well. And it began me thinking about my Yoga Sutra study. So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, or the Sutras of Patanjali, are a group of 4 books that have been passed down, and they've been dissected and elaborated on for millennia now. And that's kind of our trying to find the message, trying to find the pattern into it. But essentially, there were 4 very small books of 10 pages, I think, of large type initially, just lying down the lines, the sutras. So sutras is an old Brahmic word, like for how can I say this, like the interwoven parts of a tapestry. So almost the threads, if you like. No one of them stands alone. They all work together. And that's why it's so important to see them as sutras rather than individual threads, because they're all interlinked and they all work together to create this kind of tapestry, this idea of how things work within ourselves, physically, emotionally, psychically, and spiritually. And it's about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So yoga being unity, yoga being the bringing together of all parts of self and manifesting spiritual consciousness, spiritual self. They're really, really interesting. And I study them a lot. I find myself going back to them to kind of just check over whether or not the meaning of one sutra, for example, has changed for me in the space of time that I've been practicing, developing, living, essentially, and experiencing. So one of the sutras that I kind of always, like, I go back to, generally positioned around my yoga practice, my physical yoga practice, my asana practice. And it's something that enables me to kind of keep looking, keep searching, I suppose. So it's from book 2, Sutra 46. Right poise must be firm and without strain. Here we approach a section of the teaching which has manifestly a twofold meaning. So the sutra that was given by Patanjali was right poise must be firm and without strain. So right poise can mean so many different things. Let's just take that out for the moment. One of the amazing things about the way the sutras were written and given to us is that they talk not only from one aspect of self, not only from, for example, the physical self, but from the psychical self, from the emotional self, from the spiritual self. They relate to breath, they relate to body, they relate to the way that you behave in the world, they relate to the way you come across to other people, they relate to the way you carry yourself through life, the way you react to situations. There's so much depth to each one of the sutras. So right poise must be firm and without strain. So right poise for me would be the way that you carry yourself. It would also be the way you practice an asana, the way you hold your body. It would be your frame of mind. It would be the strength of your emotions, the way you can steady your emotions. Right poise must be firm and without strain. So for example, when you're talking about your emotional self, right poise would be keeping yourself in balance, but without stressing yourself to get one way or another. By keeping yourself in balance, you are out of the level of stress. You would, if something impacts on you emotionally and you feel like you're triggered and you feel like you're tipping into one extreme state or another, it's about being able to bring yourself back to right poise. But doing that from a place of love and not from a place of force, right? Firm, but without strain. So not bringing yourself back from that emotion through some sort of force, allowing yourself to experience that emotion. It's been brought up to be recognized. It's been brought up to be learnt from. So enabling yourself to feel that and to experience that, but don't force yourself out of it too quickly either. Allow yourself to feel and to experience. Don't judge yourself for the way that you're experiencing or feeling this. And only when the balance has been brought back in, if you like, should you really look at it from the outsider's perspective. So deal with the emotion, feel the emotion, be in the emotion while it's there for you. And then when it begins to kind of surpass, then begin to take that outsider's look and begin to feel into why it came up for you, why the strength of the emotion was really strong for you that time, if you like, or so present for you that time, and begin to kind of lean into that perception, contemplation, feel into the messages that you get when you get certain things like this. And the same for the psychical mind. For example, when you move into kind of judgment or something like that, and that you're doing it, that you're judging somebody or something. And if you don't know, then it's a wonderful practice to be aware of, because it really begins to reflect back to you how your mind's working for yourself. Because as we all know, if you are judging somebody else, it's really not a reflection of them. It's a reflection of how you perceive the world. And ultimately you perceive the world because of the way that you see yourself and the belief systems and the experiences and the thought processes that you have built up to be able to align that into a way of living that suits you ultimately. I mean, life is all about your own perception. Um, and the way that you carry yourself through life depends on that perception. The interactions that you have with other people depend on that perception. It's quite enlightening, I think, on a psychical level even, to be able to contemplate one's own mind process and to be able to contemplate and recognize the way you work as an individual. So one of the things, again, I suppose, with the psychical mind is if you feel like you're beginning to judge somebody, then it's bringing it back, being firm and being controlled with why it is that you feel like you're judging, why it is that you don't want to judge, and bringing yourself back into that balance, into that balanced poise, if you like, or pose. Um, so that's kind of, my take on those two sorts of things. So I'm just going to read out to this. I'm reading from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the book of the spiritual man, which has been translated by Charles Johnson. Now, lots of people have translated this and tried to delve into this. I've spoken before about how BKS Iyengar did the light on the Yoga Sutras as well, which was his take on the Yoga Sutras, and often looked, because he was a yoga teacher and somebody who dedicated his whole life to yoga and to serving and all those sorts of things, it really looks deeply into it from a yogic perspective. So a lot of thinking is that BKS Iyengar's gift in terms of the light on Yoga Sutras is perhaps more genuine some of the others because of the lifestyle he's lived, because of his adaptation to the yogic path. But one of the things I like about the Charles Johnson book is really, he was a man who studied a lot as an outsider in ancient India. He became fluent in Hindu and fluent in the Hindu texts, the way of seeing and believing into their religion and into the methods and the practices of their religion when, in the place where he was living and studying at that time. And I like his kind of Western view, if you like, as well as the Eastern view. Like, I've studied both of them. Just for today, I'm looking at Charles Johnson's view. But I just find that sometimes the way he expresses it resonates more with me as a Westerner. So that's just really why I'm calling on this. So right poise must be firm without strain. And then Mr. Johnson says, here we approach a section of the teaching which has manifestly a twofold meaning. The first is physical and concerns the bodily posture of the student and the regulation of breathing. These things have their direct influence upon soul life, the life of the spiritual man, since it's always and everywhere true that our study demands a sound mind in a sound body. The present sentence declares that for work and for meditation, the position of the body must be steady and without strain in order that the finer currents of life may run their course. It applies further to the poise of the soul, that fine balance and stability which nothing can shake, where the consciousness rests on the firm foundation of the spiritual being. This is indeed the house set upon a rock which the winds and the waves beat upon in vain. So first is physical and concerns the bodily posture of the position of the student and the regulation of breathing. Right poise must be firm without strain. And we talk about here going into yoga asana, which is the physical practice of yoga. And it should be firm without strain. So you should be entering into your pose, if you like, with a sense of strength, but without a sense of strain, right? So this is something that I find I kind of allow people to be kind with themselves on the mat throughout the yoga practice that I teach. This is one of the reasons. When I drop into yoga classes and I'll teach groups of people or individuals that I'm not familiar with, for example, one of the main things that comes across to me is how much pressure people are putting on themselves to gain the right poise in their pose. And what is being forgotten here for me is that there are multiple layers in each pose. There are multiple transitions in each pose, layers, if you like, that you can pull back and explore further into as you develop into that pose. So the idea of, and this has become very popular, especially in the West, the idea of beginner, intermediate, advanced practitioners, poses, teachers, really has given yoga practice a hierarchy that I don't believe was ever meant to be passed down. So from my study, from my knowledge, from my teachings, one of the reasons that we have these gradating poses, because it's no lie that some poses are a lot easier than others. You know, mountain pose, where you're simply standing tall with your hands in front of your chest, is, you know, technically, physically, a very easy pose. However, calming the mind, steadying the mind in this position, allowing the mind to be still and calm like a mountain, is the greatest challenge of it. And standing there, you know, standing there for a long period of time, you find that thought patterns often come. You'll find that uh, you're challenged on a more mental, emotional level. And again, with your breathing, as you deal with that, to steady the breath, to keep the breath, because the breath is very much affected by the mental state, by our psychical state. If we are very hyped up, you know, hyperactive, you know, agitated, anxious, anything like that, then the mind will be affected by that as well as the body. And you can recognize that first off, perhaps, in the breath. Excuse me. Mm. I notice that whenever I'm agitated, I'm breathing more shallowly. I can feel that the diaphragm doesn't drop down as much. Therefore, there is more anxiety building in my stomach. There's more ability for the anxiety to build, because as the diaphragm pushes down, of course, it pushes down through that area, releases any energy there. And as it comes back up again, the same thing happens. So as you're going down like that, you're moving the energy. And that's why this kind of threefold yogic breath is so important within practice, because we tend to just breathe into the front of the chest, into the thoracic here, when actually we need to be engaging the front of the chest, then down into the base of the lung, down towards the diaphragm, down towards the pelvis, and then finally engaging the top part here, bringing it all up again, raising that energy, you know, really beginning to feel that movement, that power, that prana, that life force being pushed and pulled up and down within ourselves. And that helps to alleviate anxiety as well. So again, just from working with the breath, you can really begin to allay your anxieties and let go of any tensions, stresses, worries, all that sort of thing that you might be feeling throughout your day, as you progress, as you move forward. So being able to hold a position, hold a pose, the right poise without strain, firm but without strain, shows a lot of physical control. It also shows a lot of mental control, and it enables you to be um, controlled within the pose, so that you may see, as you calm your breath, as you hold your poise, as you feel the strength running through your body, so you begin to feel where your body might give first. And those are the places that we might want to kind of look at developing, look at as to why they're kind of beginning to give up the hope. Why it is that they are um, letting go initially, if you like, whereas other parts of the body are really holding fast, holding firm in that asana. So one of the positions that I like to practice to find out this is warrior one, because it's slightly hip opening on both sides. It's a very strong pose. It's a very dynamic pose. With your arms up in the air, lifting the upper body up and out of the pelvis, you know, allowing that space within the spine. There's a slight kind of curvature of the spine as you open the hip on one side, as you ground the outside edge of the back foot. And that, again, is opening up gradually, but opening up in a way that it really comes directly from the pelvis. So as you open up from the pelvis, you're opening up a sense of vulnerability, a sense of creativity. You're stimulating your sacral chakra as well as your root chakra. And of course, when you begin to move those two and begin to open and separate those two, that's going to go up straight into the solar plexus, and that's where the root nerves begin to all pass through for the whole body. So that's, again, what, you know, when you feel a little bit anxious and you might get butterflies in your stomach, or you might feel sick, or however it kind of manifests for you around that area, you can really begin to kind of bring that into control with breath work, because you're just literally moving the energy up and down, moving that anxiety up and down and away, processing it all around all the internal organs that are trying to get rid of it as well. So that's a beautiful thing. One of the other things that Charles Johnson says is these things have a direct influence upon the soul life, the life of the spiritual man. So the breathing and the bodily posture will always have an effect on who you are that day. Maybe that in itself is just the only reason that you need to practice yoga, because if you believe, or if you accept that your mental self and your physical self affect how your day pans out, which for me is a is a fundamental truth. It's not that's not, for me, is not up for discussion. I know that if I wake up in a pain, with a pain down my neck, for example, into my shoulder, that's going to affect me until either that pain goes or I get some sort of treatment for it. And that's why we have pain, to be able to reflect back to us what needs help and what needs support. So yeah, so like right poise, firm and right poise is very, very important, not just for your asana pose, but also for your mental, the mental side of it all, the spiritual side of it all as well, or the philosophical side of it all as well. So you're remaining firm, and you're in your right-minded pose, but still, like, philosophically, you are you are in control. You are reading, you are engaging in whatever it is that you want to read in, even if it's a strong pulling force. You remain firm, you remain in the right frame of mind, you remain in poise, and you can begin to kind of learn and adapt through that as well. So then the next thing that he says is the present sentence declares that for work and for meditation, the position of the body must be steady and without strain, in order that the finer currents of life may run their course. This, I would say, is very, very true. We seem to take our bodies very much for granted as we cruise through life. And those people who suffer through their bodies really, I find in my experience, have kind of two outlooks. They have the outlook whereby they are ashamed of their body, they're frustrated by their body, they're embarrassed of their bodies, all those sorts of things that really create negative body images, physical images, and ultimately permeate down through and into self, of the fact that you're not good enough and you need more, and that there's all these sorts of things. So it really begins to kind of bring home to me how, when you are focused in on your asana practice and you are breathing deeply and you are breathing in and out of the moment, you are able to focus in on being strong, on being supple, on being flexible, and that sets you up for the whole day. So that's a big thing. It's a big deal, especially if you're going into an environment where you're not particularly happy. For example, say you're going into work, and you are kind of, you've been rolling this idea around your mind for months and months and months. You're kind of thinking to yourself, I don't know, like, I don't really enjoy my job. I'd like to do something different. What is it that I can do? I'm worried about the money. I'm worried about the change. I'm worried about how much it actually might cost me to change. I really don't have that money at the moment. I really don't have that ability to be able to invest at the moment. But I would say to you that if that's what you're experiencing, then this is the moment for the catalyst. This is the moment for the change. There's no time like the present. I just, I feel like, actually, if we all just went out and did, rather than overthought or try to plan out or anything like that, then the world would be a very different place. I've started, for my own practice, again, to really practice kind of ahimsa and contemplation and awareness within my practice. I've started picking up rubbish around the walk that I take my dog on. So every day we go for like this long walk, various places, but one of them is right next to a river, and a lot of people come down, and they'll, especially with this heat, they'll go down and they will splash around and have a laugh with their children, maybe have a barbecue, maybe have a picnic, whatever. But there is always, always, always loads and loads and loads of rubbish around there. And then, of course, the geese get into it, the swans, the foxes, the deer even, they smell this kind of this sugar, this want for the rubbish food that we all eat, and go towards it, and will pull stuff out of the bins even if they've been put in there nicely, so that they can have a little bit of the thing that they crave. Um, and I suppose this is one of the kind of the things that it's both in work and meditation. So it's in work and play. It's in work and contemplation. It's in, you know, you've got to enable yourself to be able to live the life you want. And one of the first things that you have to do is to really let go of the judgments and the ideals and the plans, if you like, that your family have had for you, that you've had for you, in favor of doing something that you really, really love to do. So the family one is a big one, because there's often a lot of people thinking that they're letting others down if they aren't practicing what they need to be doing, or they aren't in a certain line of work, or they aren't earning a certain amount of money, or whatever. But essentially, it's these things that come back to us that are things that fill us up. The pub's a great place to go to, but you don't really want to go to on your own. You want people around you all the time, because you are a social being. That is who you are. You need to recognize that. You need to kind of embrace that and find your tribe, find the group of people that are waiting and watching and listening to your every move, excited about what it is that you're going to be able to talk about. So it applies further to the poise of the soul, that fine balance and stability which nothing can shake, where the consciousness rests on the firm foundations of spiritual being. So that, I think, is this kind of idea again of being able to respond rather than react to situations that come into your sphere. The poise of the soul, that fine balance and stability which nothing can shake, where the consciousness rests on the firm foundation of the spiritual being. And this is why it's so important to really cultivate your own spiritual self, because once you begin to tap into that self, once you begin to recognize what he or she looks like, once you begin to really, what's the word I'm looking for? Once you begin to really kind of drop in to what it is that you really want to express, then I think a certain peace permeates throughout you. It permeates throughout your body. Once you've found what it is that you specifically are good at, and there might be many things that you're good at, but there will be one thing that is linked by something that is often known as the golden thread. The one thing that will come through to you through everything that you've been through. And everything, people will recognize you because of it, perhaps. And they may not have said. It might be something that you might need to ask people, what do you think is the one thing that always comes across from me, that is always permeated by me, that has a bit of me in it, if you like. Because that's the sort of thing, that's your soul coming through. And the poise of the soul, that fine balance and stability, which nothing can shake, is a contented soul, is a happy soul, is a state of consciousness that is content and happy and ready to again give as well as receive. This indeed is the house set upon a rock which the winds and waves beat upon in vain. So it wouldn't matter then if your soul is calm, if your soul is peaceful. It doesn't matter then if you have some kind of weird stuff going on around you, if you're finding it hard to kind of get up and go to work. You can begin to see things differently. And whether that means that, actually because you're beginning to find it hard to get up and go to work, you're looking at your work and discovering that it's not exactly the thing that you wanted to be doing anymore. It has been, and it was, and it's fabulous. But now there's more for you. Now there's a different way. And that's something that kind of, again, you can practice on dropping into on your mat with your yoga asana every day as you begin to accept yourself for who you are that day. So if you drop into your mat and you find out, okay, that yesterday you could do like Hanuman splits or Hanuman asana, and then today you kind of drop in and your hamstrings are really tight and you're just a bit like, it's just not going to happen today. You need to accept that. You need to accept that and move on. Like I've got to the point now where if I'm not feeling a certain pose, or, I'm drawn to practice a certain pose, but when I get into it, I'm just not comfortable there. I'm just not happy about the space that I'm in at that time. Then I will do something else to counterbalance. So whether I usually I open up my heart chakra to be able to receive and then give into myself. But again, if you're looking for something that's going to be kind of a quick fix, I don't think the spiritual path is the right thing to be in a quick fix at all. It's one of those things that is a progression throughout life, and yet it's one of those things that you have to put into daily. So again, my yoga practice really cements me good in that foundation. So one of the other sutras that I wanted to read out to you following on from that was right poise is to be gained by steady and temperate effort and by setting the heart upon the everlasting. So again, it's that finding that thing in the soul, that finding that part of you in the soul that is everlasting. And I think we have this recognition of this part of ourselves within each one of us. We have this knowing, this knowledge that we are more than just our physical selves, the talents that we may have, the abilities that we cultivate. We know that there is something deeper. And I believe that we know that from being young children. I just believe that we are then brought up in such a way that we either forget or we're not encouraged. In fact, we're encouraged into a different way of lifestyle. And that, I suppose, yeah, that we need to find it. And that becomes what life purpose becomes about. We need to find out what it is that we are looking to reflect back out into the world. So one of the things that I'm trying to manifest at the moment is financial freedom. Those golden words, financial freedom. I have decided that I love my job so much, I never want to give it up. But I don't, if I'm never going to give it up, and I mean well into like my 80s, if I'm never going to give it up, there has to be some residual income that's coming in to make sure that when I'm ill, I'm still able to earn money that will pay for my care. When I am, really wanting to go off and go traveling or something like that, when my spirit, my soul really call to me and they make me or they ask me to do something else, I have to be the one now, I've realized, to be able to guide that and say, yep, absolutely, we're going. Or, no, absolutely not. I don't feel like I'm ready, or I don't feel like I want to, or whatever, whatever it's about, really. That's touching in with your soul and finding out exactly what's kind of good for you and going from there. So this idea that get steady and temperate effort and setting the heart upon the everlasting is setting your heart upon exploration of the soul. Is steady and temperate effort, I believe, is like routine or ritual, something that enables you to constantly remain steady, constantly remain in who you are, remain looking, because it will instigate that for you. And the temperate effort would be, again, not killing yourself to do it. You don't have to kill yourself to do it. Yoga invites you to be calm, to be creative, to be cathartic in your asanas. It invites you to choose how you're going to expand that asana to include yourself and your self needs that day. It gives you that freedom. It gives you that power, if you like. So Charles Johnson explains, it says here again, there is a twofold meaning. Physical poise is to be gained by steadier effort of the muscles, by gradual and wise training linked with with a right understanding of and relation with the universal force of gravity. Uprightness of the body demands that both these conditions shall be fulfilled. So the conditions being the steady effort of the muscles and gradual and wise training. So again, you're making sure that both your body and your mind are really fixated, really in tune, in a line with what it is that you as a self really need out of your life, or really want to manifest out of your life. Whatever it is that you feel like you've come here to do, we need both mind and we need physical self on board to be able to achieve it. With the relation with the universal force of gravity, uprightness of body demands that both these conditions shall be fulfilled. In like manner, the firm and upright poise of the spiritual man is to be gained by steady and continued effort, always guided by wisdom and by setting the heart on the eternal, filling the soul with the atmosphere of the natural spiritual world, of the spiritual world. Neither is effective without the other. Aspiration without effort brings weakness. Effort without aspiration brings a false strength, not resting on enduring things. The two teachers made for the right poise, the two together make for the right poise, which sets the spiritual man firmly and steadfastly on his feet. So by gaining firm and upright poise of the mind, which is ordinarily guided by wisdom and setting the heart on the eternal, filling the soul with, and the atmosphere of the spiritual world, neither is effective without the other. So you need to be in this state of duality to be able to find your solidarity, if you like, your singularity. You need to be able to recognize these parts of yourself and marry them together for work to be able to do this. And again, I feel like yoga really does this perfectly. It works with the breath. It calms the mind. So you're working two parts there, as well as the physical asana, as well as the philosophical side of yoga, which, always tends to feed me on a more psychical level. It goes straight into my mind, of course, but at the same time, when I recount that, it has become very, very spiritual. I feel like I'm getting a download or a message in from source when I'm talking to my clients, because I am having faith that is what I'm doing. And that is really one of the ideas, again, going back to quantum mechanics. One of the ideas is that if matter and energy are the same, which they are, then how is it that both split when given an option to separate, and that, or rather, they both split when given the opportunity to separate, but then they want to kind of come back together and recatalyst and recreate again. So I have a lot of kind of thoughts around this area, but one of the things that really pleased me yesterday was, and I'm just actually going to go because I've got it all written down. That's always, I've got journals and stuff everywhere. And what Paul was talking about was that really humans are very reluctant to change until things get bad. We tend to wait until that catalyst. We tend to wait until we're so big, we're so fat, we're so greedy, like the caterpillar, that the change cells have a chance to come through. But we're very reluctant to change. We've aligned change with upset. We've aligned change with being a bad thing, with a sense of loss, with a sense of grief. And I feel like actually it would be a great practice to be every day just kind of saying yes to things, like the yes man, actually taking people up on their opportunity of going to the cinema with free tickets, or taking somebody up on a meal invitation, or an invitation to go out or something for the day. All possibilities exist already. That's another thing that Paul said to me, like that's all the possibilities in every dynamic already exist. It's just literally on how you see things. So let me just quickly scan down. Okay, so Einstein's theory of E equals mc squared proved that energy and matter were fundamentally the same mind-blowing mechanistic science. And that's when they were finally brought together as a kind of a unit 250 years later, it blew mechanistic science out of the water. Matter and energy are completely interchangeable. Quantum mechanics works on that which we know that works both. Oh, what have I said there? Both waves, which is energy, and particles, which is matter, exist as one or the other depending on the mind of the observer. So that's crazy in itself, right? So you're thinking yourself, right, you're in a science lab, something like that, and they've got energy doing one thing and particles doing the other. They've got the waves, the energy, and particles, the little nuts, existing as one or the other over depending on the mind, sorry, I can't read my writing, the mind of the observer. So all energy and matter exist as one or the other, or both, or neither, all at the same time, depending on the mind of the observer. The observance of the observer affected the outcomes of electron science. Only when the observer found or focused their attention on where they expected the electron to appear, did the electron appear. So that's crazy as well, and proves to us that we can really create anything that we want in our life, because it's only when you think it's going to go somewhere that it goes somewhere. Otherwise, it's open to diversity. It's open still to, being led somewhere, whether that be a good place or a bad, or a good thing or a bad thing, sorry. It's leading it constantly out and away from you. Whereas actually what Patanjali is saying is that, and quantum physics is backing up, is that your mind and your physical self are very much as one, very much. And, that in itself can be quite a release, like an idea of kind of releasing and letting go into this idea that whatever happens, the universe has got me. Now, I've done a few like little tests and stuff. I've shared a few of these with you. But one of the things that I kind of did quite a long time ago now, actually, was enable myself to, I've never been a big prayer. Right? I've never been somebody who has, my grandma used to get us to sit down at the end of the night and pray with her before bed. But me and my sister never really knew what we were praying about. We never really felt any sort of connection. We never felt like there was another God, or, well, not the God that we'd been told that there was anyway. Like, I knew that there was spirituality. I knew that there was a way of talking to animals and plants that they responded to, simply because of the experience that I've had up until that point. But one of the other things that I found quite fascinating about the Yoga Sutras and about then the quantum mechanics is that it's all about what's up here, all of it. And if you're looking for something, you will find it. Now let's break that down just one more step. If you need something, go get it, right? If you need something, go and get it. Because we will let other people come into, our country, if you like, and we will let them develop their work. We will let them feel into it. We will let them talk about it. We will, we allow that space to develop. But what's really important is actually what's going in within you. So whatever anybody else shares, whatever anybody else shares, you only take what's relevant to you at the end of it. So all the books that you read, you'll take the message that's relevant to you. All the television programs that you might watch, you will take the message that's relevant to you. Listening to me now, watching me now, you will take the messages that are relevant for you. You won't just remain in one state throughout this process. You're going to move quite lucidly from one state into another as you begin to find your way with the new information, or react or respond to the information. I try to keep calm in everything, but I know that some people can get really, really upset by certain things. And I appreciate that. I know that that's, perhaps a way of being able to deal with stuff. But it's also, why is it that you get so stressed about such small things? What is it that has made you really feel like the world is against you, or, you're not good enough or anything like that? That self-dialogue is really, really key. And again, for me, when I come back to my yoga practice first thing in the morning, that self-dialogue it gives me an opportunity then to be able to amend it. If it comes in negative from the day before, I can begin to show myself real love and compassion and remind myself of the wonderful few things I'm doing over the day or over the course of the week. And through that, you really begin to shape the way that you see the world, shape your existence, shape your perspective so that it suits you more. Right? Because if you start with your conscious mind, if you start with your psychical mind, then you will begin to train everything else. And again, when you're in an asana pose and your psychical mind's going crazy, then you use your breath to calm the psychical mind, because you can't get away from it. Every time you breathe for like 3 or 5 breaths, deep breath, like, you're already creating something out in the world, which is reflected back into your Facebook groups. And from there you can kind of carry on with whatever it is that you're trying to manifest for yourself that day. Maybe it will be something like, do you know what, I'm just trying to get through this day. If your health is failing, I'm just trying to get through this day. Maybe it's, I've got so much to do, I'm super, super busy, and I've got all the kids' roles on top. Maybe it's that thing. But what it does is it sets you in a calm place to be able to handle all of those things. And that, again, that's one of the reasons that I really love yoga. It's not just because it does make you feel better, not just because that it helps to strengthen your mind, strengthen and make flexible your body. Also, it helps you to break down barriers within yourself. It helps you to see yourself for who you really are. There's so many different things, different ways of complementing or using yoga as a yoga practice to complement your yoga practice. Um, and I think, yeah, like it, once you really get into it, once you really begin to kind of work through this idea that you are the creator of your own world, and that you start the minute you open your eyes and you finish almost the minute you go to sleep. A lot of people I know suffering from insomnia, and they won't be able to kind of sleep as easy. Then maybe these thoughts will be running around in their minds more. But again, if you concentrate back on the breath, then you should be able to calm the mind, you should be able to calm the body, and eventually be able to calm the breath. Okay, if you're used to doing that sort of thing, though, it may take you a little bit longer than just one go. So, in the manner, the firm and upright pose of the spiritual man is to be gained by steady and continued effort, always guided by wisdom and setting the heart on the eternal, filling the soul with the atmosphere of the spiritual world. So if you're preparing to go into a spiritual place, and this is, I think, why I end up working in my room, is you end up preparing that place to receive you spiritually. Anything that resonates with you spiritually, you might, place into this place. We talked about altars, and having somewhere that you can go and give thanks, which is essentially what an altar is. It's a place where you can go and give thanks for everything that you've got and everything that you receive. And it's a lovely thing. It brings you again into a very mindful place, into a place of real conscious self, asking for things, receiving things, asking for blessings on people and places and things, animals, all that sort of thing. And again, it enables you to kind of bring back to yourself, and see, perhaps sometimes for the first time, how clear life has become for you when you simplify everything. Um, Again, holding the asana pose, again, you can get this same sort of thing. I've actually had this experience as well whilst running. So first 20 minutes of running for me tend to be about letting go of the breath, letting go of any feelings of lethargy, tiredness, letting go of stiffness in the muscles, in the bones, letting go of all that sort of stuff, and enabling myself by changing the patterns to suit the pace that I'm going. So, for example, if I am really powering it on with the dog, I'm feeling particularly energetic that day, I know that I need to alter my breathing to be able to cope with that. I know that I need to be really focused in on my breath moving alongside my body to be able to really gain the benefits that I have in yoga practice. So that's something that's I'm working on at the moment, really, is really running and running and running and running, and then walking for a little while and being able to take in, as this new person that I've become, as I've let go of everything, as I've dropped everything by the wayside, as I begin to kind of plow onwards. So I kind of leave behind me the shell of the Kirsty that kind of felt exhausted and tired at 2 minutes in, who is is a sort of person who would like to do anything but really run the dog. I don't mind to walk him, that's great, but I don't really want to run him. But he gets so much from it that I feel like I have to. But again, it's that whole feeling of, what's that whole feeling of? That whole feeling of doing what's good for you, learning for yourself. There's probably a Japanese word for it. I should imagine the Japanese have a word for it that's beautiful. But it's that putting yourself first. It's that being present in your life. It is it is really enabling you to, what's the word? Enabling you to structure and create, I suppose, with poise, with strength, with grace. I think grace is the word that I've been struggling to kind of get to. It's that idea that nothing should be forced. Grace is beauty in poise, I think. I think that's how I'd kind of align grace in with what we're talking about. Grace is beauty within poise. It is a way that you carry yourself. It's the way that you project yourself. And again, to be able to drop in on that daily enables you to create what you want and what will go on to serve you throughout the day. The fruit of right poise is the strength to resist the shocks of infatuation or sorrow. So infatuation, that quick lust for something, that idea that something will make you feel better, whether you're reaching for a glass of wine, a bar of chocolate, whether you are, pushing on through that treadmill because you really want to get to 30, because then you'll feel like you've had a really good session and you can feel like, your job here is done. And that you have, that you've achieved what you wanted to achieve that morning. Resist the shocks of infatuation or sorrow. So this is again maintaining a sense of balance, maintaining a sense of self-balance, self-purpose. The simpler psychical sense, which is also covered by the wording of the original, this sentence means that wise effort should be established, such as bodily posture and bodily poise that the accidents of life cannot disturb, as the captain remains steady throughout disaster to overtake his ship. Then the deeper sense is far more important. The spiritual man too must learn to withstand all shocks, to remain steadfast through the perturbations, don't even know what that word means, perturbations, external things, and the storms and whirlpools of the physical world. This is the empower, which is gained by wise continuous effort and by filling the spirit with atmosphere of the eternal. So the spiritual man here, then, that part of yourself that keeps returning to look for a part of yourself, or maybe it already knows what it's meant to be doing, but it's looking for a way of being able to do it. Hold fast onto that. Just hold fast onto it. Whatever you're doing that's enabling that, do that, and then try to do more. Because by staying in that mindset, by staying in that right poise, which is also another, could be another term for mindset, you are enabling yourself to get into that state of contemplation over whatever it is that you're doing. And contemplation forces creativity, or allows creativity, should I say. It's something that I feel quite strongly about. I talk to a lot of my clients about it. That ability for you to be able to let go of the trappings of modern life and really move into a place that is sacred, that is safe, that is allows you to grow a little bit like a pot with with tomatoes growing in it, like a grow bag. It allows you to grow through from the bottom up. That nice strong foundation allows you to be flexible, allows you to be strong, allows you to make other decisions that sometimes you might not trust yourself to make. But if you're standing in your spiritual, then you feel that presence, you feel that guide, you feel that oneness with everything around you. And you suddenly feel a lot more willing to kind of take and to make a change so that can be manifest, that can, that seed can really grow into the big tree that it wants to be. The deeper sense is far more important. The spiritual man too must learn to withstand all shocks, to remain steadfast through the perpetuations of the external world and the storms and withdrawal and whirlpools of the physical world, psychical world. Sorry, this is the power which is gained by continuous effort and by filling the spirit with the atmosphere of the eternal. So again, coming into yourself, focusing in on yourself, using yourself as a source of drive and aiming for that drive to be you coming into balance is your fundamental first step in yoga, in life experience, in living life generally. I would say as well, you kind of want to be going out steady heart, steady mind, enabling yourself to really feel into what it is that you want to create. That's a great way of kind of describing it, being able to come out of your psychical self and experience and develop your physical self. So that being said, coming back to Einstein and the theory of E equals mc squared, the matter and energy that we have around us is completely interchangeable, dependent on the way that you see it. So if you see that somebody's been talking bad about you, right? So you can hear what they're saying. You see their body language. You're right in that moment. What do? Do you punch them back and continue on that fight and that aggression and let that last? Or do you do something else? What would you do? Think about it for a moment. Because sometimes the obvious answer is, well, just fight back, wouldn't I? It's like, okay, but what about if you just took it? What about if you took yourself comfortably into like a star or onto a meditation cushion or something like that and just visualized people getting killed in your name and how that would make you feel? Just visualize that for a second. And then when you've visualized that, I want you to think about how it would make you feel to have that taken away from you. How would it make you feel not to have those people in your life, those things in your life? How would it make you feel? And again, if you can, journal on that sort of stuff, because that's the sort of stuff that magic's made out of. That's the sort of things whereby, suddenly you get this kind of shift, you get this awakening. And another kind of way of being able to practice that even more, I suppose, is by really beginning to bring your attention into practices, texts, philosophies that really help feed your soul. So this, I think, is one of the reasons I keep coming back to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, because I like the way it's written. I like the honesty and pragmatism of the piece. Uh, mm. It's about building your practice, not simply through asana, but through everything. And by taking the lessons that you learn from the mat and by being present in them, you'll be able to draw from the experience of those when you all kind of suddenly move into another space, when something changes. And change can be quite a threatening thing. Not everybody likes change. Not everybody's welcome of change. But change is a constant. There's no getting away from it. Every day is different. Every moment is different. If you are able to really see, perhaps for the first time, but if you're able to really see how you function, then you can start making the small changes into your life that you would like to see going forward. Okay? So when this is gained, there follows the right guidance of the life currents, the control of the incoming and outgoing breath. So like I said, the breath will affect you and you will affect the breath. So all this union, all this yoga is working on you on so many different levels that you become very, very aware, very, very conscious. Yeah, just become like this conscious being that is moving through each moment of your day, regulating, balancing, enabling, perhaps teaching, perhaps sharing, and that's good for not just you, but for everybody else around you as well. Because if you're in balance, then it's a lot easier to be able to bring other people into balance. If you have studied and worked through this yourself, then you have the benefit experience to be able to offer these people as well. If you have, uh, if you have been practicing and practicing and practicing, for example, and not gotten anywhere with a certain pose for a long time, you recognize how vulnerable that makes you feel. You recognize how how disappointed you are, if you like, and you might also recognize how critical thought is coming up for you. So this basis from contemplation here that we talk about with the right poise, with holding in the right pose, can work on all those things at once. So for example, say you are having trouble with Hanuman asana. So Hanuman asana, which is a kind of an open split, like forward legs, backward legs split. And as you're moving into it, you practiced it yesterday, and you're moving into it today, you're feeling very, very tight. You're feeling very, very kind of weak, I suppose, a little bit trusting, but you'll feel like when she enters in with the needle to give you the epidural, you can feel like everything there is holding fast. And it's that sort of thing that you want to be able to release and relax through conscious effort, through consciousness, being able to hold everything. That's fine. You can still hold everything, but don't hold it tightly. Hold it relaxed, and then go through and just do everything that you need to do with that sort of level of control, level of compassion, level of self-acceptance, level of love, if you like, for yourself as well. One of the other things I think that yoga philosophy has given me is a really good grounding for bringing up my children. I'm very, parents, no one, well, I don't know anybody that ever goes to a parenting class. I know there are parenting classes. I do actually know one person who's been to a parenting class, but he was kind of almost forced into doing it by jurisdiction so that he could see his family again. So, you've kind of got those things. But one of the things that I think really begins to cement it into you, that you are creating daily, that you are in control of all this, that you are in the moment, that every moment is more powerful than the next, that every moment is a source to grow, every moment is a source to catalyst the change, to become from the caterpillar into the butterfly. And bringing all of that together can really help with how you then project yourself out to the outside world, because you feel more mindful of it, or you feel much more aware, you feel much more in control, you feel as though what other people say won't dent your skin, won't bother you so much, because you've got all these other things going on in your life. You don't need to focus in on that one bad thing. You can focus in on kind of all the things that are going on, and find peace and happiness in that, instead of it just being like your nuclear family going on away on holiday, for example. Try inviting grandma and granddad. Try inviting a friend, another group of friends with children, or without children, so that you're tested and that you get to test that balance, and practice your yoga throughout that as well, because then every day when you get up and you get back and you get into your ritual that serves you for the rest of the day, you can really enable them to learn from you, to be inspired by you, and that's a wonderful thing. It's the connection between the mind, body, and breath that is really, really important, to be able to stimulate you into a positive sense of a positive mindset, a positive attitude towards your body, and enlightenment around the breath, and enlightenment there for me anyway. And yeah, so I think that enables you going forward to really choose how you respond to things, choose how you react to things. Um, I had a run-in with my husband a few months ago now, and he was saying to me about work. We're talking about money and that sort of thing, and he said to me, you need to really look at money in a different light, because at the moment you look at it like it's something to hold on to. And when you're looking at it and you're looking at it as if it's something to hold on to, then you want to hold on to it. Well, that was the first sort of time that I think ever had that relationship with money that I have reflected. And yeah, it was so true. I totally do hold on to it. I've always been like a saver, if you like. I like to have a little nest egg behind me. In fact, I'm struggling at the moment because we're dipping more and more into our nest egg, just for living, really. And it's it throws up a lot of things in me. It throws up a lot of worries. It throws up a lot of insecurities. It throws up doubts and fears, and all those things I need to then process when I get into my body. I need to then process them so they're not held stagnant there. And yoga helps me to do this, and nothing else does so much. Like a run is amazing for that period of time that you're running. So I'll take my dog for a daily run, and I will run and run and run, and I've certainly experienced joy. I've certainly experienced love there. I've experienced a lot of things, but I've also experienced a way of not really accepting, I suppose, like that what I do deserves a certain amount of money. I feel like it's all, one of the things that I love to do is give, and I don't necessarily give to receive. I think that's one of the things with me. I just don't give to receive. I'm happy to give and to help and to do whatever, and I don't really want anything back from it. So I've had to change that, because that got reflected back to me, and that's since been bothering me when I come into the mats. Like, I'm just set to kind of put my prices up slightly, for my teaching and for my courses next year. And I'm already 6 months away from that. I'm already feeling into how that makes me feel and moving through the challenges of it. And it's because in my mind, I've kind of got this poverty mindset a little bit where I'm holding on to the money always because it's so precious rather than using it as a currency for exchange. And that's what I'm kind of really leaning into at the moment. And every day on my yoga practice, there will be at least one thought that comes up that says to me, have you thought about what it is that you're gonna ask for? Have you thought about how it is? How can you add more value? How can you, design and develop more? Like already 6 months away from 2019, and I am really questioning how it is that I'm going to be able to do all this. And yet I know from the quantum creating, again, that's just dropped into my mind. I know from the quantum creating that really it's just the way I look at it. And by focusing my mind on the way that I look at it in a certain way, holding that poise, holding that steadiness, I can create exactly what it is that I want, and I can feel into it and see it the way that I need to see it to be able to accept it. So I hope that makes sense. In my mind, that makes sense. um, so again, yoga is so much more than just asana. Yoga is so much more than just breath work, than just meditation, than it's so much more than just philosophy. It's so much more than um, being able to detach from things. That's another huge part of yoga is detachment. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoy about this idea of creating my life, and yoga being the central point around that creation, is that there are so many positive ways of infusing yoga into your life that doesn't require you to get on a mat every day. It's bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of devotion and love, where you would give up to other people. You just give and give and give and give and give and know that it will be repaid to you. So I think one of the things that it helps me feel really good about that is that the more that you can give to other people is the more that you inspire other people to give to you. The more you receive from people, the more grateful you are for them. The more grateful you are for that relationship, the more the more energy you put into that relationship. Energy transferal is the source of life, really. I mean, it's the way that we love. It's the way that we appreciate. It's the way that we connect. That energy that we have through connecting out with nature is a really beautiful thing. The way that we connect with one another is a really beautiful thing. Or it can be. And I believe that being able to cultivate that energy into a real strong, healthy, mindful energy currency is something that will really help us, or it certainly helped me anyway, going forward into giving and receiving, and not just financial aspects, but in every aspect of your life as well. So if you feel like you're able to, you can, give financially to various different trusts, organizations, charities, whatever. If you can't do that financially, then physically you can go out and do it. If you can do that through many different ways as well, physically and financially. You can do so. For example, I very rarely, very very rarely, but will buy myself something new unless I need it for a specific reason, a specific event or something like that. I very rarely buy myself something new, preferring instead to reuse and recycle. So this helps me to feel like I'm giving back in so many ways, because I'm giving back to the environment by choosing to reuse something, and effectively recycle it so that it's not just kind of damage, damage out to the world, damage out to the water systems, damage out in terms of landfill, damage out in terms of pollution from factories and manipulating other people, all those sorts of things. So it's good in that sense, but it's also good for me in the fact that I recognize that as I put in daily, so I should be able to take out daily. And that helps me really build up my relationship with energy being a currency transferal, which, it, it is like whenever that's what I get from the majority of my transferals, the majority of the things that I buy, even if I, reuse, recycle, I'm buying something from the charity shop, for example, I feel like I'm giving to the charity. I feel like I'm giving back to nature. I feel like I'm then giving to me because I'm able to receive all those things because there's no guilt attached to it. Now, I don't like the idea of children in sweatshops, producing the clothes that I wear. I don't want that in my world. So I choose not to kind of go into that world anymore. I've been very guilty of that in the past, and I should imagine that most of us have, that we, for the sake of having something that we want, we suspend our knowledge of what surrounds that thing. I remember then there was a big, this was back in the 90s, there was a big expose into Nike and the way that they were using children in sweatshops in China and India to produce their goods. And it really didn't sit well with me at all. Some of the images that were coming out were quite horrific, and I decided then and there that I wasn't going to indulge my Nike obsession, because at the time I was really into these sort of Nike Air Riffs, they were called, which had like this sort of split toe, which were like the comfiest trainers to wear ever, to walk in, to run in especially, and gave more of a precedence onto the sort of the barefoot running system, which I like to practice whenever I can. So that was really kind of quite interesting to me, the way that I reacted against that. Nestle has been another one. There's recurrent issues of how Nestle are manipulating less educated parts of our world. Um, there was a thing there was a big sort of again an expose in, I think it was probably again early 90s, that was reflecting back how Nestle as a company were giving out free formula milk to the more poor, impoverished people in Africa, or the women in Africa, who they felt were struggling to feed their children and to nourish their children. But what they were doing was they weren't giving it as a follow-on milk to breast milk. They were giving it right when the baby was born. And they were saying to these ladies, all the propaganda, all the advertising was saying, this is better than your breast milk, because you know that from, the way that you're living, you so hand to mouth, and sometimes going hours and hours without food, you know that your body can't be producing the nutrients that your baby needs. Therefore, better that you spend your energy getting money together to buy these nutrients via bottle formula milk from Nestle than than changing the way, or than anybody changing the way that works for you and investing in a different way for you. I mean, that. So this again, I was appalled by, because what happened, of course, was that the women would then think, okay, this is a better way than, this is a better way of feeding my children than giving them the breast milk, which was obviously, now we know, has the colostrum is infused with further DNA structure. It's infused with the essential fatty acids and fats that are essential for brain growth, that are essential for our nervous system structure. So many things in breast milk that are needed to enable the human body to continue the essential growth once it's come out of the woman's body. So this is all stuff that we know about, but they obviously didn't, and they were having this formula milk introduced into their lives super early, so before 3 months even, and so the mums were breastfeeding up until 3 months, or before, and then before 3 months even cutting off and giving formula milk. And then of course their breast milk would dry up because the need for the milk is no longer, the body would stop producing it, and what they'd find is that they would then dry up. 2 months in, when the free formula milk has run out and mum has definitely dried up and baby's gotten bigger and hungrier, they're having to sell possessions, trade children, move around like nomads, trying to earn money, make money, that sort of thing, so that they can afford the formula milk to keep feeding their baby for a further few months before they could begin to integrate in food that they have, basic corn and meal and rice and milk products, because their little systems aren't developed enough to be able to cope and control and digest those sorts of foods. And this just incensed me. Like it still does. I can still feel that fire burning in my belly when I first. I just think, my God, you've taken one of the most beautiful things that a woman can do for her child, um, which is to feed them naturally and from herself. If you can't breastfeed, if you choose not to breastfeed, that's for you. My mind is that it's something that is essential. And the scientific research says that really, there's so much more that goes on, with breast milk than, it's not just feeding. It's all the developmental stuff afterwards. And I know, like my husband gets really bad allergies, really bad allergies. He's very, very super sensitive to dust, pollen, from trees, from flowers, from plants, all sorts of things. And he'll have multiple sneezing attacks. And his mum fed him for 6 weeks before she moved him onto bottle formula in the 70s. That was because she wanted to go back to work. When my third daughter was, or my first daughter with him, my middle baby was born, she had this sneezing thing that my husband has. So when he sneezes like 12 times in a row. Cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. And they're proper sneezes. They come right from the bottom of the belly all the way up, like they're throwing them. It's a real energy force that comes up. And he spends a lot of his life, blowing his nose and coping with the mucus and the fluid that's produced by the body to clean out these systems. It's quite a thing for him to deal with. He hates it. He literally hates it. And so when my daughter was born, and at a very young age, she began this whole sneezing thing, like months old, I really assumed that she kind of just picked this up from my husband and that there was going to be nothing that we could do. And that, that was going to be her lot as well. She was going to have to go through this, and I was going to have to be mindful of what I could do to support her in this allergy response that she was experiencing. But after I breastfed all my children for over a year, after the first 6 months of feeding, I noticed that she was sneezing less, and that it didn't matter what season came into play and what my husband was experiencing, because he experienced that rainy season was actually worse for us in Thailand, because the humidity would make kind of everything react more strongly, and because of rainy season there would be lots of different kind of pollens and things in the air that were reliant on the rain to transfer them away, like the trees would drop rather than expult their pollens out into the air so that they would fall onto the floor. Then the rain would wash them down in the rain, and then that would be how they would repollinate and sow their seeds, if you like, externally. So what I noticed after about 6 months is that my daughter wasn't sneezing as much. And as the months began to go on, I noticed that she wasn't sneezing at all. And she was exactly like my husband in the sense that it would be multiple sneezing. It would be full rock the body sneezing that she was experiencing. And she basically, I believe, with the breastfeeding, grew out of it. The breastfeeding allowed her to develop more of her immune system. It enabled her to develop more of the response units in her body. It enabled her to strengthen her internal system more, so that she was able to cope with the allergy response that she was getting to the world around her. And I sort of said this, my husband had noticed that obviously she was sneezing, and he was sort of saying, oh God, like, I hope she doesn't grow up to be like me. I've hated this my whole life. I've hated this. And so, yeah, it enabled him to see, I think, as well, that actually this is kind of like to do with his immune system, this is to do with his response system, and he needs to be protecting that. Because as we did more research into it, and he began to ask his mum and sort of say, Mum, how long did you breastfeed me for? And what sort of, things were you doing? What sort of, how were you looking after yourself whilst you were nursing me? And, it became a big thing for us, because it became very obvious that the more that I fed her, the older she got and the more milk that she was taking, the better off she was. And, that's something that I feel like these poor children that have enough of a struggle, been born into a life of struggle anyway, in some aspects, have really had that taken away from them. And it's a method of control. It's a method of consumerism that's been forced upon them. And these poor women, nothing that they could do, and then having to sell everything that they owned and be forced into abject poverty because of it, because of trying to, fund this milk, which is necessarily a huge company all over the world with fingers in very, very many pies. There's really no reason for them to be subjecting, some of the poorest nations, some of the poorest and more, least educated, if you like, as well, nations on earth to their products, and yet still they did. And that sort of thing just incenses me. Forgotten where I'm going with this now, but anyway, that was one of the things that made me really feel very conscious about the way that we live our lives and the messages and the consciousness that you can permeate through your daily life when you're aware of it, when you are living it, when you are creating it on a daily basis. And again, it's doing the right thing by people, isn't it? It's that, making sure that whatever actions you take throughout your day, they permeate well into other people's days. You're not taking advantage of other people. You're not your business isn't based on somebody else's lack of, whether it be lack of education or lack of finance or lack of emotional support, whatever it is, lack of physical, so whatever it is, there's always something that there's always something that you can be feeding off of if you're not mindful to it. And I think this is one of the things, like, that Emma's saying, that it all comes from the heart. If you can serve, and I think this is where I'm feeding into with my kind of idea of finance and energy being an exchange and all that sort of thing as well. But if you can really come from the heart with whatever it is that you do, and feel from the heart into certain situations, and recognize that it's a cycle, it's a giving and receiving cycle, much like moving from one asana to the next, from one breath to the next, from one thought process to the next, becomes like a psychical movement through your day, much like the flowers open and close, with the cycle of the day, with the opening as soon as the sun comes up and they know they have a job to do, they have a way of serving to tend to. And then when they close up at the end of the day, they are saying, okay, now I need to rest so that I'm able to give back some more. And I think that's, a really beautiful way of dealing with life and going through life and being able to see life. Because if it is all about perception, which it becomes, as we know from energy and matter in quantum physics, it's all about the perception. It's all about whether or not there's somebody there to perceive it. So everything is all about the way you see life. So if you can start by setting your intention in the day to have a good day, to put into yourself so that you have the energy to give out to other people and to serve other people and to be generous towards other people, which is something that you can practice no matter what your job role is. You can be generous to other people with your kindness. You can be generous to other people with your thought processes. You can pray for other people. If you see other people at the moment, there are some terrible fires raging outside Athens, and already people have died, and are in, a state of having lost everything. Let's send our prayers out to them. If we do nothing else for today, let's send our prayers out to those people who are suffering right now. The people in Athens, the people in other parts of the world that are suffering as well. There's so many, aren't there? Let's face it. So many people who are less fortunate than we are. For me to be able to sit down for 2 hours of a day and speak to you, or almost 2 hours of a day and speak to you, whenever the session ends, and for you to be able to sit and listen, that gives us an awareness of being very fortunate that we have that time to be able to sit and listen, that we have that time, that I have that time to be able to sit down and give. I feel very grateful for, and I'm afforded it by many ways, many things, many people, in fact. I've got people looking after, watching my children while I'm on here. They're being mindful of the fact that I'm creating this at the moment and I'm online. Therefore, they're not online, so I've got a good internet connection. I'm mindful of the fact that I am very well able to be here in this present moment, and affording myself the opportunity to express and explore my own thoughts as much as I am affording you a tentative argument into exploration. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful world that we live in when we look at giving and receiving and putting out there and drawing back at the same time. And I think, yeah, like I say, if we do nothing, if we come from a point at the very beginning of our day of feeling like we are receiving, therefore we should be giving, and you give out as much as you can throughout the day, whether it be patience for people on the road, whether it be a smile to someone walking down the street, whether it be love to somebody who needs it that day, whether it be patience where it's needed, whether it be effort where you see other people need help. Um, all of those things we have the opportunity to be able to cultivate throughout our day. And again, we can begin to set our intentions first thing in the morning whilst we build ourselves up, whilst we transfer the energy through our asana practice, whilst we mindfully breathe and practice our pranayama so that our lungs and ourselves might really truly open up fully so that we are the full people that we are, so that we're able to give from a place of real expanse and abundance. And we're able to then give all that out. That's a beautiful thing. So today I invite you to go out and really practice yoga on all forms. Practice breathing. Practice breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth initially. And then practice just bringing that in. So it's just breathing in and out through your nose, calmly, quietly, being very aware of your breath, no matter where you are, even if you're sitting in front of a computer and you're typing away. Suddenly be aware of your breath, be aware of what it is that you're doing today, what it is that you're doing in that moment of everything. How are you sitting? Are you slumped over your desk? Or can actually, with the breath, you breathe in, breathe out, and begin to really open up? If you are feeling like people are putting pressure on you, what can you do to alleviate that pressure for yourself? How can you give back to yourself then? If you feel like you're under pressure, if you feel like life's not going well today, what can you do? How can you help yourself to come out of that funk, to come out of that mindset? Because at the end of the day, it's your perception, right? It's your perception. It all comes back to you. Why are you feeling like they're taking so much out of you? Why do you feel like you've been burdened with too much? Why is that? Is that because of the way that you compare yourself with other people? Is that the way that you see an injustice being done? What is it? Focus in on that for a moment. Give yourself that. Set your intention there. And practice that every day, wherever you are. Whether you're walking down the street, you're mindful of the position of your feet as they stroll down through the garden or along the street. Be aware. Be aware of where your balance lays there. Do you walk on the outside edge of your feet? Do your feet slump in on the sides? Be aware. Be mindful of that and contemplate that. If you walk on the outside edges of your feet, be aware of the fact that that's transitioned to the outside of your body. All right, it transpires to be the shoulder points, to the hip points, the outside edges of your body. Why not bring it in? Bring it into your center again. Bring it into that heart space. Be aware of how you place your feet down. Be aware of the way that you're sitting. Be aware of the way you're breathing. Be aware of the way you're carrying yourself. So are you slumped over? Are you slumped over? Are you that heavy with the weight of life and with the weight of the world? Or actually, if you breathe in and breathe in this source that's available to us all, can you open? Can you allow? Can you receive? Can you accept? And can you make yourself less vulnerable because of it? Can you grab that strength that you're getting with it? I invite you to practice yoga throughout your day, not through asana, but through the principles of yoga, or through asana as well. Why not? Even if you don't practice yoga, you can easily kind of get into a book, get online, and just read some of the basic stuff. The basic stretching up of the arms so that you raise up the rib cage, the lengthening out of the spine so that you allow the cerebral fluid and the energy within your body to spiral beautifully around the spine, which then feeds out throughout all the extremities of your body. You can even get just into the mindset of it, the principles of yoga. Google the Eightfold Path of Yoga or the 8 Principles of Yoga, the Ashtanga Path of Yoga. And Google that and look into that and see if you can derive something from that, something that fits, something that enables you today, because it very, very rarely lets me down. And as I've brought it into other people's lives, so I see it supports them mentally, emotionally, physically. I have a lady who I'm teaching at the moment who is saying that she hasn't felt so alive, so physically able in her body for the last 6 or 7 years. And, you know, she's at a very, very basic level of practice because of what she's going through herself in her life. But it's not just her, you know, it's emotional, it's physical, it's enabling, it's a learning. I invite you to explore yoga. I really do. And I hope what I've shared with you today has instigated some sort of interest for you to be able to go and do that. So this is me signing off for today. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day or evening when this is aired. And I look forward to seeing you for my last This Happy Guru show next week before I break for the summer, because I'm going on a mad adventure, and I'm sure I'll be coming back to you with lots of videos and musings throughout that, because I'm intending to do that on my trip. We're traveling around Europe, myself and my family. And I'm really trying to, as I said to you before, I'm trying to manifest financial freedom for myself at the moment. And one of the ways of me feeling free, one of the freest I've ever felt, is by being on the road. And I know I've got this kind of nomadic part to me that I really want to kind of, again, keep exploring. But you need money to be able to do that. And freedom is finding the financial side to that for me. So that's what I'm looking on manifesting. That's what I'm focusing on as we travel around, how I can do this, what options are open to me. And so I'm going to be really excited to explore that and then feed perhaps some of that stuff back to you when we regroup again. Thank you so much for listening. As always, thank you for being present in my own headspace apart from anything else. Thank you. Namaste. Goodbye.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. In the last 3 years, Conscious Consumer Network has broadcast over 2,800 shows in multiple languages, featuring guests from across the world, whilst creating media that is aimed at the creation of a free, fair, peaceful, just, sustainable world. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lady Liberty.
And this is Mira Siegel.
In 2018, Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination. You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level. Having become a pillar of stability in the turbulent world of independent media, we have even more going on in 2018. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded network, and we rely on all of you to keep us on the air. Show your support for independent media by donating to our 2018 Network Support Fund. Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.